This video is brought to you by Captivating History. Ragnar becomes king and meets Lagertha. Once there was a king named Sigurd Ring. He had a fair wife named Alfield, and together they had a son named Ragnar. Ragnar grew into a handsome young man, strong and well-made in his body. When Ragnar was 15 years old, his mother died. After a suitable period of mourning, Sigurd began to look for a new wife. He set his heart upon Älfsol, the daughter of the king of Jutland. Sigurd sent messages to Jutland, asking for Älfsol's hand. When Älfsol's father heard the message, he scoffed. He said to the messenger, "Take this answer back to your master. Say to him, Sigurd Ring may be a great king, but he is an old man. My daughter is worthy of a better husband than one who is likely to die, if not on his own wedding night, then certainly soon thereafter." When Sigurd heard the king of Jutland's reply, he flew into a rage. "An old man, am I, with one foot in the grave? The churl who sits upon the throne of Jutland will regret his reply to me. I will make him eat those words at the point of my spear and take his daughter to wife whether he wills it or no." Sigurd assembled his army and marched upon Jutland. The Jutlanders fought well and valiantly, but they were no match for Sigurd's men. Soon it became clear that Sigurd would be the victor, and rather than allowing him to take Älfsol by force, her father gave her a goblet of poison to drink, and so she died. After the battle, Älfsol's body was found by Sigurd's men. They carried it carefully back to their king, who began to weep and mourn when he saw that the fair young woman was dead and that she had died by poisoning. "Fetch my best ship and build upon it a pyre," said Sigurd. "I will give Älfsol a good funeral, one fit for a queen, even though she did not live to become one." The ship was pulled up onto the shore, and Älfsol's body was laid upon a pyre as though she had been a queen. Sigurd stood next to the ship as the pyre was kindled. When the mooring line was cut and the ship began to drift out with the tide, Sigurd sprang aboard and stood in the prow. "If Älfsol could not join me as my wife in this life, I shall join her in death," cried Sigurd as he drew his sword. "My son Ragnar is a brave and worthy man. Take him now to be your king." Then Sigurd took the sword and plunged it into his breast. He fell into the flames, and so his body was burned along with Älfsol's. And so it was that Ragnar became king, even though he was only 15 years old. The men of his realm quickly learned to respect him, for his judgment was sound, and none could match him in battle. Ragnar led his men on many raids and into many battles, and always came back victorious, with the holds of their ships full of plunder. Ragnar himself escaped every fight without even a scratch, for his mother had woven him a magic shirt that kept him from all harm. One of Ragnar's many raiding expeditions took him to Norway. When the battles and the raids were done, he and his men found a sheltered spot at which to beach their ships. They were weary and wanted to rest before sailing for home. They made camp and then spent the night on the beach. In the morning, Ragnar desired to be alone. He took with him his sword and walked through the forest and up one of the many hills that surrounded the beach. The sky was clear, the sun was bright, and Ragnar delighted in the beauty of the day. When he reached the crown of one of the hills, Ragnar decided to sit upon the grass and enjoy the peaceful morning. As he looked out over the land, he saw two armies marching toward one another. The armies met and clashed, and soon it began to go very poorly indeed for one side. Ragnar watched more closely and perceived that the losing army was led not by a man, but by a woman who showed such skill with her weapons that none could stand against her. Nevertheless, she could not conquer an entire army by her strength alone, and as her warriors fell one by one under the blades of her enemies, she found herself nearly surrounded and hard-pressed. Ragnar drew his sword and ran to her aid. He fought so fiercely and with such strength that soon he and the woman between them put the other army to flight. Once the battle was over, the woman went to Ragnar and said, "I thank you for your aid, but for you, surely I would also lie dead on the field alongside so many doughty men. My name is Lagertha, and I rule the lands here. May I know your name that I may thank you properly?" "I am Ragnar, son of Sigurd Ring, and a king among my own people," said Ragnar. "My men and I beached our ships near here. You are most welcome for my help. Never have I seen a shield maiden fight with such strength and skill." "Come back to my stronghold with me," said Lagertha. and bring your men with you. You will all be my guests at my victory feast." That night, Ragnar and his men drank and feasted with Lagertha. By the end of the night, Ragnar had fallen in love with Lagertha, who he found to be wise and well respected by her people. Ragnar proposed marriage, and Lagertha accepted on condition that they remain in her realm. "I would not be an idle consort, content merely to wait upon her royal husband. Here I rule, and here I shall stay." Ragnar agreed to Lagertha's terms, and they spent 3 happy years together as husband and wife. At the end of the 3rd year, Ragnar found himself becoming restless. He longed for voyages across the sea and adventures that led to battle and plunder in faraway places. One day, a messenger came to Ragnar with news that his kingdom was in danger. Ragnar called for his armor and weapons and caused a ship to be made ready. Then he went to Lagertha and said, "I must return to my own country. I have been away for too long, and now my kingdom is likely to fall. Come with me. Your skill in battle is unmatched, and I would be grateful for your help." "When we wed, I told you that it was on condition that you remained here," said Lagertha. "I will not leave the throne of my land to become a retainer in yours. You must choose. Either you stay here as my consort, or we part ways forever." "Then part we must," said Ragnar, "for I cannot forsake my own people. Farewell, and may good fortune smile upon you." And so it was that Ragnar and Lagertha parted ways, never to see one another again in this world. Ragnar and the Dragon. Once there was an Earl of Gotland named Harald, who had a beautiful daughter named Thora. Harald doted on his daughter. He gave Thora her own house to live in, and a day rarely passed without the Earl giving Thora some present or other. One day, Harald brought his daughter what looked like a small garden snake, which had been given to him by a merchant from a far-off land. The young woman delighted in the creature and made quite a pet of it. But unbeknownst to Thora and her father, the serpent was not a common snake. It was a baby dragon. The serpent continued to grow and grow until finally it was so large it could no longer fit inside Thora's house. It wrapped itself around the house, and because of its great love for Thora, it would allow no one to cross the threshold except the man who fed it a whole ox every day and who brought food and drink and other needful things to the young woman. "This cannot stand," said the Earl. "My daughter is a prisoner in her own home, and there is no warrior among my own people who is able to kill that dread beast. Send messengers throughout all the lands. Tell them that whoever slays that dragon may have my daughter's hand in marriage and a great deal of gold besides." The messengers were duly sent, and soon one of them arrived at Ragnar's court. The messenger was given an audience with Ragnar, where he explained his errand to the young king. "I come from the Earl of Gotland," said the messenger. "He seeks a champion to slay the dragon that keeps his daughter prisoner in her own home. The dragon is large and fearsome. Its fangs drip venom, and its very blood will poison anything it touches. There is no one in all of Gotland who has proven himself brave enough to face the beast. So the Earl promises the hand of his daughter in marriage, and much gold besides, to whoever can slay the monster and come out of the battle alive." "Tell me more of the Earl's daughter," said Ragnar. "What manner of woman is she?" "She is the fairest creature upon this earth," said the messenger. "I saw her once with my own eyes through a window of her house. She is comely of face and body, and her hair is golden and soft as silk. Any man would be proud to call her his wife, and doubtless many champions would have already fought to the death for the honor of her hand, but for the interference of the dragon." Ragnar thanked the messenger and ordered that he be given food and drink and a place to rest before going on his way. Then Ragnar began to think of how he might win Thora's hand for himself. He was very young, but he was king, and he knew that every king was in need of a queen. Surely there was no more worthy queen in the world than the daughter of Earl Harald. Also, Ragnar had an adventurous spirit, and nothing tempted him quite so much as the chance to test his mettle against a fully grown dragon with venomous fangs and poisonous blood. But how to kill the beast without being poisoned himself? Finally, Ragnar hit upon the solution. He called for breeches and a cloak to be made out of a shaggy goat's hide. When the garments were complete, Ragnar soaked them in pitch. As soon as the pitch had dried, Ragnar sailed for Gotland, bringing his best spear with him. Beaching his ship in a sheltered place that no one was likely to visit, he went ashore secretly, and dressed in his odd, shaggy clothing, he crept silently to Thora's house, where the dragon lay sleeping with its great coils wrapped around the walls. Before the dragon could rouse itself to fight, Ragnar thrust at it with his spear and then drew the spear out again. The dragon screamed and went to attack, but Ragnar was too quick. Ragnar thrust again with his spear, and this time the point struck bone. Ragnar pulled the shaft of the spear out, but the shaft broke, and the head remained lodged in the dragon's body. As the dragon thrashed and screamed in its death throes, some of its blood splashed upon Ragnar, but he took no hurt because he was well protected by his odd, shaggy clothing. From that day forward, he was known as Lothbrok, which means shaggy breeches. Thora looked out her window just as Ragnar was walking away. She saw that the dragon had been slain, and she rightly guessed that the man outside was the one who had killed it. Thora went out of her house and called to Ragnar. "Are you the one who slew the dragon? Please accept my thanks," she said. Ragnar turned, and as he did so, Thora noted how very tall and broad he was, and how very strong and handsome. "Yes, it was I who slew the beast," said Ragnar. "Who are you?" asked Thora. "Tell me your name." Ragnar spoke this verse in reply. "Your champion am I, beautiful lady. 18 winters have I walked the earth. Though young, I am valiant and vowed to bring low the landfish. Dread beast who besets you, with strength and spear I vanquished the vile worm, thrusting home to the very heart of the heath salmon." Then Ragnar turned and walked away. In the morning, Thora told her father that the dragon had been slain, and she took the earl to see its body. The earl saw the end of the spear shaft sticking out of the beast's hide. He commanded that the end of the spear be removed. It took 3 strong men to pull it out, and when they finally had it in their hands, the 3 of them could barely lift it, even when they all tried together. The earl marveled at this and asked Thora, "Who is this man? Surely he must be a great champion to wield such a mighty weapon. He deserves our thanks, and I have promised him your hand in marriage." "I don't know who he is, father," said the young woman. "I asked him his name, but he answered with a riddle and then walked away without saying anything else. All I know about him is that he is 18 winters old, and that he was very oddly dressed, and that he slew the dragon." The earl then decided that a great meeting should be held at his court to find out who his daughter's deliverer was. He sent messengers throughout all the lands, telling the champions to assemble and say whether it was they who had slain the dragon or not, and to bring proof that they had done the deed themselves, and not some other. On the day of the meeting, Ragnar came into the earl's court along with the men of his ship. He brought with him the broken spear shaft, but he did not wear his shaggy clothing, for he did not want the earl's daughter to see him and identify him thereby. When all the men had assembled in the hall, the earl thanked them for coming and explained what needed to be done. "The dragon that beset my household has been slain by a mighty spear. The head and part of the shaft were left behind in the beast's body. I will bring the head to each of you so that you may say whether it is yours or not. If you claim it, be prepared to prove it by producing the shaft of the spear. Whoever it is that did this deed will have my daughter's hand in marriage, and much gold besides, as I have promised." Then the earl caused the spearhead to be shown to each man in turn. Every one of them denied that it was theirs, even though they longed to say that it was, and thus have the earl's daughter in marriage, for she was very beautiful indeed. Finally, the spearhead was shown to Ragnar. "It is mine," he said. "With that spear, I slew the dragon." "Prove it," said the earl, "and if you lie, know that it will go ill for you." Ragnar produced the broken spear shaft, and the other piece was fitted to it. It was obvious that this was the man who had killed the dragon. The earl proclaimed a great feast to celebrate the death of the beast, the courage and strength of Ragnar, and the marriage of his daughter to such a fine champion. At the feast, Ragnar took Thora to be his wife, and when the feasting was over, he took her to his own country, where they lived happily together for many years. Thora gave Ragnar 2 sons named Eric and Agnar. They grew into fine young men, both tall, handsome, and strong. None could best them either in battle or in contests of sport. A day came when Thora fell gravely ill. In a few days she was dead. Ragnar mourned her greatly, and his sorrow was so deep that he could not abide to stay in the country where his beloved wife had died. Ragnar turned the rule of his kingdom over to his sons and advisors, and then took ship to begin a life of adventure and raiding once again. Ragnar and Aslog. Aslog, who is now called Kraka, was 16 years old when Ragnar Lothbrok returned to the sea with his champions. They raided far and near, and after one such raid, they breached their ships near Spangareth, where dwelt Grima and Aki and their foster daughter. Ragnar told his cooks to take a measure of flour and other things needed to bake bread and to go find a willing cottager or baker who would help them. The cooks did as Ragnar asked, and once everything was assembled, they went looking for someone to help them bake the bread. Soon enough, they came across Grima and Aki's farmstead. They knocked on the door, and Grima answered. "What is it you want?" she asked. "We are the companions of Ragnar Lothbrok," they replied. "We breached our ships not far from here. We have come to ask for help in baking bread. Now you have told who we are. What is your name?" "I am called Grima, and I would gladly help you, but my hands are too gnarled and stiff to knead bread anymore. I will call my daughter, and she will help you." Now, Kraka had been out in the field tending to the cattle when she spied Ragnar's ships pulled up on the shingle of the beach. Thinking that some of the men might come to the farmstead, she went and bathed herself and washed her hair, things that Grima had forbidden her to do, lest any man come across her and see how very beautiful she was. Kraka entered the cottage just as the men were beginning to light a fire to bake the bread. When they saw the girl, they could not believe their eyes. They had never seen a woman so beautiful in all their travels. To make a long story short, the cooks returned to their ships with the burned bread. When the meal was served later, all the men complained at how burnt the bread was. Ragnar said, "What happened? You're skilled cooks. You've never burnt the bread like this before." "No, we have never burnt the bread like this before," said the senior cook, "but we had never seen a girl that beautiful before either." "Explain this," said Ragnar. "Well," said the junior cook, "we found a farmstead and asked for help baking bread, as you asked us to do, and the old woman who lived there had her daughter help us. I swear to you I've never seen a lovelier woman in all my days. She was so entrancing that we kept our gaze fixed on her, and in so doing, we burned the bread." Ragnar scoffed. "No woman has ever been that beautiful. Come now, tell us what really happened." But the cooks could not change their tale. Finally, Ragnar said, "Very well, if she is as lovely as you have said, go back to the farmstead and ask her to come and visit me here, for it is high time I took a wife again. But you must give her this message. Say to her, 'Come to meet Ragnar Lothbrok, our king and the captain of the ships. But he commands that you must come neither dressed nor undressed, neither sated nor hungry, nor must you come alone, but no man may come along with you.'" The cooks went back to the farmstead, where they found Grima and Kraka working together inside the cottage. They told Kraka what Ragnar said she should do. When Grima heard Ragnar's message, she scoffed. "What is he playing at, giving my daughter these ridiculous instructions? I think this king and captain of yours, if he really is both those things, might not be quite all there." "No, I think there is a sound purpose behind this message, if only we can puzzle it out," said Kraka. Then she said to the cooks, "Thank your king and captain for his invitation. Tell him that I cannot come with you right now, but that I will visit him in the morning." The cooks went back to the ships and gave Ragnar Kraka's answer. During the night, Kraka thought hard about Ragnar's message and how she might do as he had bid. Finally, she arrived at a solution and went to sleep. In the morning, Kraka went to Aki and said, "I would like to borrow your trout net, please." Aki thought this an odd request, but he gave her the net anyway. Kraka went to her chamber and took off all her clothes. Then she wrapped the net around herself as though it were a dress. When that was done, she went into the kitchen and took a bite of a leek that lay on the table. "Now I am neither dressed nor undressed, and I am neither sated nor hungry." Kraka turned to Aki once again. "Lend me your old dog so that I may not go alone, but with no man accompanying me." Kraka went to the ships, the old dog trotting by her side. When she arrived, she stood at the edge of the beach and waited. From his ship, Ragnar saw her and called out, "What is your name, and what is your business here?" Kraka replied, "I came at the command of Ragnar, captain and king. I dared not deny his summons. See now how I stand here, both dressed and naked, a net draped about my form, and a fine friend at my side, that I am not alone, yet no man is with me." Ragnar told 2 of his men to go and meet the young woman and bring her to the ship. Kraka said to the messengers when they arrived, "Gladly I will go to meet your captain and king, but only on condition that both I and my companion are guaranteed safety." The messengers promised safe conduct to Kraka and the dog, and then led her onto the ship. But when Ragnar went to greet Kraka, the dog bit him. When Ragnar's men saw this, they jumped at the dog and killed it. Kraka stayed on board for a time, conversing with Ragnar. Ragnar saw that Kraka was every bit as wise and clever as she was beautiful, and he longed to have her for his wife. Ragnar asked her to stay with him, but Kraka replied that if she truly had safe conduct, he would let her go in peace. "Why will you not stay?" said Ragnar. "I am wholly pleased with you, and I love you. I wish you to stay here with me tonight and become my wife." "I will not stay tonight," said Kraka. "I will not stay at all until you have made one more journey and returned to me in the same mind you are now. For it is possible that once you have sailed away, you will forget all about me, and had I wed you, I would be forsaken." And so Kraka returned to the old couple's cottage, and Ragnar sailed with the first fair wind. After 10 months, when Ragnar's journey was done, he returned to Spengareth and sent his men to fetch Kraka, for he still desired her for his wife. Kraka returned to Ragnar's ship, where she was given a fair welcome. Ragnar sailed with Kraka and his men back to his homeland, where a great wedding feast was prepared. At the feast, Ragnar married Kraka and took her for his queen, and they lived many happy years together. Kraka gave Ragnar 4 fine sons, who were named Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironsides, Vitsirk, and Ragnvald. Ivar was called the Boneless because his bones were soft and did not knit properly. He could not walk and had to be carried everywhere on a litter. What he lacked in physical strength, he made up for in wisdom and cunning, and his brothers and stepbrothers all relied on his good counsel. Bjorn was named Ironsides because his skin was so tough that no weapon could penetrate it. Ragnvald died young, killed in battle in an attack on Whitby that Ivar had planned. The feud with King Eystein. There came a time when Ragnar went to visit King Eystein in Uppsala. Ragnar and Eystein were old friends and allies, and so there was much joy when they met at Eystein's court. Eystein had a beautiful daughter named Ingeborg, who had not yet been betrothed to any man. Now Ragnar's advisors had long been vexed that their queen was the daughter of farmers, and when they saw how beautiful Ingeborg was, they began to speak out against Kraka in their hopes that Ragnar would divorce her and marry Ingeborg instead. Ragnar had noted the beauty of Ingeborg, and he was swayed by the arguments of his advisors. Eystein also wished his daughter to marry Ragnar. When it came time to sail for home, Ragnar left Uppsala, having promised to divorce Kraka and marry Ingeborg. As Kraka waited at home for her husband to return, she sat in the courtyard under a tree working at some embroidery. While she worked, 3 birds came and sat in the branches of the tree. The birds then sang this song: "Queen and lady art thou now, until king and captain should break his vow, and a new bride place upon the throne, his heart towards you he turns to stone." And so it was that Kraka learned of Ragnar's plan to divorce her and marry another instead. When Ragnar returned home, Kraka pretended that she knew nothing of his intent. She greeted him joyfully, as she always did, asking him how his visit had gone and how his friends fared. By this time, Ragnar was beginning to feel that he had behaved churlishly in agreeing to marry Ingeborg and put Kraka away, and because of his shame, he was very curt in his answers. This served only to confirm for Kraka what the birds had said to her. Finally, Kraka decided to reveal what she knew. "Why do you intend to divorce me and marry another?" asked Kraka. "Who told you that?" said Ragnar, for only he and his closest advisors knew of this plan, and they had only just returned home. 3 birds I have who are friendly to me. When you go on journeys, I send them to follow you so that they may bring me news. While I sat in the courtyard at my embroidery, they came and sang to me that you wish to have another woman in my place. Why would you want to do that? What ill have I done to you to make you wish to send me away?" "No ill have you done, but your lowly birth counts against you," said Ragnar. "My advisors grow restless at having a peasant for a queen." "Then tell your advisors that they are badly mistaken, and that no peasant sits upon the throne, but rather the daughter of Sigurd Fafnersben and the Valkyrie Brynhild," said Kraka. "You found me living among peasants, but those people are not my parents. When I was but a very small child, my foster father, King Heimer, spirited me away from my father's court to keep me safe from the men who had killed my father. Heimer hid me inside his harp, along with some valuables, and took to the road in search of a place where we might live in peace. One day we came to Grima and Aki's farmstead, where Heimer asked for shelter. Grima and Aki killed my foster father for the gold and fine garments he carried within his harp. When they broke open the harp to get at the valuable things, they also found me there. The old people adopted me and kept me as their own, but I am none of their blood. A daughter of the Volsungs am I, well fit to be your queen. My true name is Auslog." "An astonishing tale to be sure," said Ragnar. "But what proof have you that this is true? For proof I must have if I am to convince my advisors, and if I am to break my betrothal to Ingeborg, daughter of King Eystein." "Two things Grima and Aki allowed me to keep when they found me," said Auslog. "One is my mother's wedding ring. The other is a letter my mother wrote to me before she died. Also, I have found myself again with child. When the child is born, it will be a boy, and he will have the image of a serpent in one of his eyes as a token of his relation to my father, who slew the great dragon Fafnir." Auslog then produced the ring and the letter, and when her time came to be delivered of her child, she gave birth to a boy who had the image of a serpent in one eye. The child was named Sigurd Snake in the Eye in honor of his grandfather and on account of the marking in his eye. Ragnar saw all of these tokens and begged forgiveness of Auslog. Then he sent word to Eystein that he must break his betrothal to Ingeborg. And thus it was that Ragnar and Eystein, who had been friends from of old, became sworn enemies. This enmity would prove to be the undoing of Agnar and Erik, Ragnar's sons by his first wife Thora. When Ragnar went back on his promise to wed Ingeborg, Eystein vowed revenge. Eystein summoned his army with the intent of marching to Denmark and taking Ragnar's stronghold. As soon as word arrived of what Eystein purposed to do, Ragnar mustered his men and prepared to go to war. But Agnar and Erik asked to be sent to the head of the army in Ragnar's place. "We are men full grown, father," said Agnar. "Give us the honor of leading your army into battle. We lack nothing in strength or skill, and we wish only to return victorious, as you have done many a time." Ragnar gave his sons his blessing. Agnar and Erik went forth with Ragnar's army, and in time they met Eystein and his warriors as they were marching toward Denmark. It was a great and fierce battle. Agnar and Erik acquitted themselves well and slew many, but their army was thrown into disarray by an enchanted cow that Eystein loosed in their midst. Soon all was lost, for not only had Ragnar's army been thrown into confusion by the cow, they were also overwhelmed by the greater number of warriors in Eystein's army. When the battle was finally done, Agnar lay dead on the field, while Erik and a great part of Ragnar's army had been captured by Eystein. "A bold and skilled warrior are you," Eystein said to Erik. "I would have peace between us. Take my daughter to wife, and may you stay here in my country. Great riches will be yours." "No peace can there be between us," said Erik. "You slew my brother. I saw his body on the field. Keep your daughter and keep your riches. All I ask is that my father's men be allowed to go home in safety and a nest of spears be planted in the ground for me that I may join my brother in death." Eystein saw that Erik was not to be swayed, so he ordered that Ragnar's warriors be allowed to travel home unmolested, and that a nest of spears be made with the shafts planted in the ground and the points facing upward. When the spears had been planted, Erik took the ring from his hand and gave it to one of his men. "Take this ring home to my stepmother," he said, "and tell her and my stepbrothers how the sons of Thora died." Then Erik threw himself upon the points of the spears and so perished. When Ragnar heard what had happened in Sweden, he was enraged by the defeat of his army, and even more so by the deaths of his two eldest sons. Auslog likewise mourned Agnar and Erik as though they had been her own. Ivar and Bjorn went before their father and begged his blessing to go to Sweden and avenge their stepbrothers' deaths. Ragnar gladly granted them leave, and so they sailed with the next fair wind, having assembled a great body of picked warriors known for their courage and skill. When the day of the battle arrived, Eystein once again loosed his enchanted cow into the ranks of Ragnar's men. Again the army was thrown into disarray, but Ivar was not dismayed. Although Ivar could not walk, he was still a redoubtable archer, and in this battle he showed both his skill and his cool-headedness. As the enchanted cow plunged up and down, scattering Ragnar's warriors, Ivar fitted an arrow to the string and loosed a deadly shot, killing the cow instantly. Once the cow's enchantment had been dispelled, Ragnar's men rallied. Soon the Swedish warriors were put to flight, and Eystein was killed as he ran away from the field. Thus were the sons of Thora and Ragnar Lothbrok avenged. The death of Ragnar Lothbrok. When the battle with Eystein was over, Ragnar's remaining sons took ship and went raiding. They sailed southward, capturing town after town and laying waste to village after village. Finally, they reached the central coast of Italy, where they thought to raid a city called Luna. They beached their ships within view of the town, and all the townsfolk scurried to secure their gates and garrison their walls in expectation of a Viking assault. Now, the captain of the Viking ships was a man named Halfdan, who was both clever and a skilled warrior, well trusted by Ragnar's sons and foster father to Sigurd Snake in the Eye. When the Vikings saw that Luna was too well defended to capture by a direct attack, Halfdan came up with a cunning plan instead. Messengers were sent into the town with instructions to say that the Vikings had no intention of raiding. They told the leaders of the town and its church that their captain, a man named Halfdan, had fallen gravely ill and wished to be baptized as a Christian before he died. A priest was dispatched to the Viking ships in order to give the sacrament to Halfdan, who pretended to be fully converted and to accept Christ as his God. A few days after Halfdan's supposed conversion, the Vikings sent word to the town saying that their captain had died. They told the town leaders that Halfdan wished for a funeral mass with Christian burial and that he had left all his fortune to the church in Luna. Thinking that since the Vikings had not yet shown any wish to attack the town and they would continue to behave peacefully, the governor of the town gave leave to the Vikings to bring Halfdan's coffin into the city gates and to attend the funeral mass. Little did the governor know that Halfdan was fully alive inside his coffin and that the Vikings had no intention of leaving without plundering the town. In accord with Halfdan's plan, the Vikings made a grand funeral procession into the church, where Halfdan's coffin was laid upon a bier. But once the church doors were closed and the mass began, Halfdan kicked open the coffin and sprang out, sword drawn. The other Vikings drew the weapons they had concealed within their clothing, and thus they slew all the worthies of the town. Then they ran out of the church to sack and set fire to the houses. After the sack of Luna, Ragnar's sons laid waste to many other towns. Soon, word of their exploits was carried back to Ragnar's court. "I must take ship again," Ragnar said. "I will have no one say that Ragnar's sons are more valiant than their father." Now, many years ago, Ragnar had invaded England and had made devastating raids all through the country. Ragnar had demanded tribute from the king as the price of peace, but once Ragnar sailed home, the king had refused to pay. Ragnar deemed an expedition to extract the tribute to be a chance for glory that would rival that of his sons, and so he caused 2 ships to be made, each large enough to carry a great host. When Aslog saw what Ragnar was doing, she feared for the success of his raid. "Husband," she said, "would it not be better to sail with many smaller ships rather than 2 large ones?" "Perhaps," Ragnar answered, "but no man has ever conquered England with only 2 ships, and I mean to be the first one to do it. Think of the songs that will be sung. My fame will be everlasting." Aslog tried and tried to sway her husband, but Ragnar stood firm. Finally, Aslog realized it was futile to argue with him. She went to the chest where she kept her dearest treasures, and from it she took a magic shirt that she had woven from her own hair and that had been made without any seams. "Since your course is not to be altered, take this shirt with you," said Aslog. "Wear it into battle. It will protect you from all wounds, and then maybe you will be able to return home to me." When the ships were made and provisioned and the army assembled, Ragnar sailed for England. But his voyage was ill-fated from the start. As Ragnar's ships approached the coast, a great storm blew up, and the ships foundered on the rocks not far from the beach. Undaunted, Ragnar and his men made their way onto land, where they began raiding every village and hamlet that stood in their path. Word of the Viking attacks came to King Ella. He assembled a great host and went out to meet Ragnar's army, intending to crush it thoroughly before it could do any more damage. The English had the greater host by far, so the battle was decided quickly in Ella's favor. Most of Ragnar's men were killed, and Ragnar himself was taken prisoner. Ragnar was bound and taken before the king. "Tell us your name and your station," Ella demanded, but Ragnar refused to answer. "If you will not answer," said Ella, "you will be thrown into a pit of venomous serpents. I ask you again, what is your name and your station?" Ragnar kept his silence, so Ella did as he said he would do. Ragnar was taken and thrown into a deep pit in which there were many venomous snakes. The snakes tried to bite Ragnar, but they were not able to pierce his skin because of the magic shirt Aslog had given him. When the English realized why Ragnar was not yet dying, they stripped the shirt from him and left him to his fate. Without the shirt, the serpents were able to sink their fangs into Ragnar's flesh. Soon Ragnar felt the venom coursing through his veins and knew his death was very near. As he was dying, Ragnar sang his death song. Battles 50-1 fought I. Fearless, dauntless, countless foes I have slain. My sword shone red with their blood, and the dragon feared my spear point. Now death deals its blow to me. My bane not battle-born, but a writhing worm. Now Valhalla awaits, the warrior's paradise. Odin sent Valkyries descend to take me home. How the sons of Aslog will rage when they find how their hero father met his doom. Odin calls me now, ale cups brimful in his halls. Dying, I sing the song of my deeds. I laugh as life drains away. When Ella heard Ragnar sing of the sons of Aslog, he realized who it was that had been thrown into the pit. He ordered Ragnar to be taken out with all haste, hoping that it would be possible to save him and thus avoid the wrath of his sons. But it was too late. Ragnar was already dead by the time his body was brought up out of the pit. Thus ended the life of Ragnar Lothbrok, king, hero, and dragon's bane. If you'd like to discover the story of the revenge of Ragnar's sons and more Viking sagas, then check out our book, Viking Tales and Sagas, the captivating tale of Ragnar Lothbrok, Ivar the Boneless, Lagertha, and more, as well as the other legendary stories of Vikings in their historical context. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, make sure to grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook for free while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.